Testing, testing. Welcome to FundOpsHQ Live. I'm Danny Bloomstein. Today is April 9th, 2026, and here's the news from the fund industry from the past week. Today's show is presented by FundOpsHQ.com. For daily coverage of the funds industry, visit FundOpsHQ.com/news and subscribe to our newsletter. Busy week in alternatives and a two-track one track recording record fundraising. KKR closed a $23 billion North America PE fund, the largest of its kind ever raised. Blackstone hit a $10 billion hard cap on its flagship opportunistic credit fund. ArcLight closed a $3.9 billion infrastructure fund, 30% above target. On the other track, Barings imposed a 5% redemption cap on its private credit BDC this week, and they're not alone. Apollo, Blue Owl, Ares, and BlackRock all hit the same cap in Q1. Institutional fundraising is running hot. The retail side of private credit is under redemption pressure. Plus, a leadership change at HIG Capital, Eclipse Ventures with a $1.3 billion fund for physical AI, fresh LP commitments from Arkansas, Texas, and Virginia, and a regulatory signal on private debt. So let's get started with private equity. KKR closed the largest North America-only PE fund ever raised, $23 billion. KKR announced the final close of North America Fund 14 at approximately $23 billion, according to the Wall Street Journal. The fund is the largest private equity vehicle ever raised that invests solely in North America. Over the past decade, across the three predecessor funds, KKR has delivered a 23% gross IRR and 19% net, with a 2.1 times gross multiple on invested capital. Pete Stavros and Nate Taylor, global co-heads of private equity, said in KKR's announcement, quote, "Raising our largest fund in this environment reflects the consistency of our approach and the work our teams are doing inside our portfolio companies every day. KKR's PE assets under management have doubled since 2020. The firm now manages $229 billion. Court Street Capital closed Fund 5 at $3.8 billion, also reported by the Wall Street Journal. The target had been $3 billion, so Court Street came in 27% above. Over 40 new investors from more than 20 countries came in. This is Court Square's first flagship fund after its leadership succession and the largest in firm history. Percheron Capital closed Fund 3 at its $3.1 billion hard cap. That's double Fund 2, which closed at $1.55 billion in March 2024. Percheron is a services-focused firm founded by Golden Gate Capital veterans. Onyx Partners completed a $1.6 billion multi-asset continuation vehicle, rolling three portfolio companies, Fidelity Building Services Group, Power School, and Sedgwick, out on Onyx Partners Funds 3, 4, and 5 into a new vehicle. Lead investors were Neuberger, GIC, Apollo S3, and Stepstone. Blackstone and Tinicum agreed to take UK Aerospace and Defense Supplier Senior PLC private in a £1.4 billion deal, roughly 1.9 billion USD. The enterprise value implies 15.2 times Senior's adjusted EBITDA. The Senior's largest shareholder, Alantra, which holds over 17%, has backed the deal. Blackstone and Tinicum plan to combine Senior with Aeroflow Technologies, which Tinicum acquired earlier. A few other quick hits in private equity. Blackstone and TPG completed their take-private buyout of Hologic, the women's health firm. Francisco Partners agreed to take industrial safety firm Blackline Safety private in a deal valued up to $850 million. Energy Capital Partners is reacquiring nuclear services firm Energy Solutions from Tri-Artisan in a roughly $2 billion deal. Latour Capital closed its oversubscribed debut small cap fund at 400 million euros, about $440 million, less than a year after launch. And former Blackstone executives Isaac Haruch and Mike Berlin closed their first fund, 154 Partners, at $400 million. Aphias Capital, founded by HIG veteran Rob Wolfson, is targeting $900 million for its debut healthcare buyout fund. Sagard and Unigestion completed the merger of their PE businesses. Aurelius acquired Landis Gear, EMEA's metering business, and Courtsware separately acquired cloud communications firm Call Tower from BV Investment. Blitzer-backed PE firm closed $400 million for sports betting platform investments per Bloomberg. On to private credit. Now to private credit, Blackstone hit a $10 billion hard cap on its flagship opportunistic credit fund. The same week, Barings and four other major managers imposed redemption caps on the retail BDCs. Blackstone closed Capital Opportunities Fund 5 at over $10 billion, hitting its hard cap. That's up from $8.75 billion for Fund 4, which closed in January 2022. Blackstone's opportunistic credit strategy has generated 13% net IRR since its launch in 2007. This is the strategy's largest vintage to date. On the retail side, Barings imposed a 5% redemption cap on its $4.9 billion credit corp after Q1 withdrawal requests surged to 11.3% of shares. The fund will fulfill roughly 44% of what shareholders asked for. This is part of an industry pattern. Apollo, Blue Owl, Ares, and BlackRock all hit the same 5% cap on their BDCs this quarter. That's 5 of the largest retail private credit vehicles in the market, all at the cap at the same time. Blue Owl closed Asset Special Opportunities Fund 9 at $2.9 billion, above its $2.5 billion target. It's an asset-backed opportunistic credit strategy. Separately, Moody's cut its outlook on Blue Owl Credit Income Corp to negative this week, citing elevated redemption requests. Final quick hits in private credit. T. Rowe Price broke into the CLO market with a $403 million debut deal. SMFG and Nippon Life are in talks to set up a $3 billion LBO loan fund per Bloomberg. Morgan Stanley is launching a new private credit interval fund for wealth clients. The North Haven Strategic Credit Fund, even as outflows pressure the sector. Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund signed on MOU to anchor a King Street private credit fund targeting the Middle East. Ares Management named ex-Goldman Sachs partner E.G. Morse head of Asia Credit, replacing retiring Edwin Wong. Dinesh Goel and Gabriel Fong were also named co-heads of Asia Special Situations. CTM Asset Management closed its third CLO of 2026 at $408 million. Chicago Atlantic launched an emerging managers private credit strategy targeting Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East. Madatum hit a first close on its new private credit fund at 300 million euros. Tico Capital partnered with Brodsky Organization on a $500 million US real estate debt vehicle targeting tri-state residential and hospitality. And US regulators are launching a multi-month examination of private debt risk driven by the growing insurance sector exposure per private debt investor. On to venture capital. Eclipse Ventures closed a $1.3 billion across two funds for what they call physical AI. Eclipse closed two funds simultaneously, totaling $1.3 billion. Fund 6 closed at $720 million for early stage. Early Growth Fund 3 closed at $591 million for late stage companies. The thesis is physical AI, the convergence of AI with robotics, autonomous systems, manufacturing, and hardware. Eclipse's total AUM is now $10 billion. Eclipse is also allocating a portion of the capital to incubate companies internally rather than just writing checks to founders. JTO Capital closed its second biopharma fund at $1.2 billion, 1 billion euros. That's nearly double the predecessor fund, which closed at $630 million in 2021. JTO 2 is the largest biopharma fund ever raised by a fully independent European manager. Average ticket size is 150 million euros. The fund targets 15 to 20 clinical stage companies in obesity, oncology, autoimmune, and neurology. On to quick hits for venture capital. OpenAI alumni launched Zero Shot, a $100 million fund that's already writing checks. Collide Capital closed Fund 2 at $95 million, targeting fintech and future of work startups. Bond Stone launched a venture capital arm in Lisbon with a 50 million euro deep tech fund. Herbert Ventures in Zurich closed a 30 million Swiss franc seed fund, about $34 million. Lumen Ventures and Ulixes SGR launched a $100 million Euro venture fund in Italy. Endeavor South Africa closed Harvest Fund 3 at 230 million South African rand, about $14 million for early stage tech. Commonwealth Bank of Australia backed a $50 million Australian dollar fintech VC fund, and Lead Edge Capital is raising Fund 7 with a new focus on AI-driven secondaries. On to real estate and infrastructure. ArcLight closed its largest fund in 25 years, and Nova Infrastructure came in 30% above target. Light Arc Capital closed Infrastructure Partners Fund 8 at $3.9 billion, 30% above its $3 billion target. It's the firm's largest fund in its 25-year history. The strategy covers power, renewables, storage, transmission, midstream, and digital infrastructure. ArcLight has raised more than $6 billion across all vehicles in the last 24 months. Nova Infrastructure closed Fund 2 at $1.45 billion, also 30% above target and more than double its debut fund. The firm targets middle market North American infrastructure in environmental services, transportation, energy transition, and digital infrastructure. First two platform investments are Dart Points, an enterprise data center operator, and UGE International, a community solar and battery storage business. Carmel Partners closed Fund 9 at $1.35 billion for U.S. multifamily value add. It's below Fund 8, which raised $1.58 billion in 2023. Carmel is pivoting from ground-up development towards acquiring operating assets and has already deployed $477 million across 9 properties. A few quick hits in the real estate and infrastructure. True America Multifamily closed Fund 2 at $708 million for workforce housing. Galvanized Climate Solutions raised $370 million for its first real estate fund, with management fees tied to net zero operational targets. Stan Lib in South Africa hit a first close of 5 billion South African rand, or about $270 million, on its Kayisa Energy Transition Fund. 91 is preparing a launch of global emerging markets infrastructure debt strategy targeting up to $1 billion. Circulate Capital raised $220 million for an Asia circular economy fund, and the Australian Clean Energy Finance Corporation seeded a new Australian ethical fund targeting 1 billion Australian dollars. Quick ones on the hedge fund front. Freestone Grove, the equities-focused multi-manager launched in 2024 by former Citadel executives Todd Barker and Daniel Murillo, has doubled to more than $6 billion in assets. Pershing Square launched a takeover bid for Universal Music this week. Elliott Investment Management took a stake in Toyota Industries in connection with the Toyota Fudosan tender offer. And Sirius Capital and IM Global Partner launched Europe's first long-short equity UCITS ETF with an embedded performance fee. On to people and firms. HIG named its first non-founder CEO in the firm's 32-year history. HIG Capital, the $74 billion alternative asset manager, appointed Brian Schwartz Chief Executive Officer. Schwartz joined HIG in 1994 and has served as co-president for the past 6 years. He becomes the firm's first non-founder CEO. Co-founder Sami Menemina transitions to executive chairman alongside fellow co-founder Tony Tamer. Both remain on the investment committees Schwartz said in the firm's announcement, quote, "It is an honor to step into the role of CEO and to lead HIG at this important point in its evolution." HIG also promoted Doug Berman, head of U.S. private equity, to co-president alongside Rick Rosen. A few other quick items in the Peoples and Firms. Mercer appointed Garvin McCarthy as its first global alternative CIO, overseeing PE, credit, real assets, and hedge funds. JP Morgan Asset Management named Miles Courage head of private markets for EMEA and global head of private markets product. CVC DIF appointed Enrico Del Prete, partner and co-head of its value-add infrastructure strategy. Foresight Group hired Duncan Simmons as global head of real assets. Fraser Healthcare Partners brought in Randy Hyun as executive in residence for pharmacy services. Petricor named biotech veteran Paul Sekri operating partner. Navama Asset Management in India appointed Amit Kansal, CIO for private credit. GemCorp Capital promoted Gustavo Eben to global head of fundraising, and CVC's Catherine Petty and Mana Tree's Ellie Rubenstein were named to PE Hub and Buyout's Women in PE list. LP Corner. In the LP Corner, Arkansas Teachers Retirement authorized the largest single board allocation we tracked this week, $900 million across new fund investments. Arkansas Teacher Retirement System authorized $900 million in new fund investments. Texas Teacher Retirement System committed $626 million across PE, private equity, real estate, and infrastructure this week. Virginia Retirement System committed $1.25 billion across credit, hedge funds, and real assets. Texas County and District Retirement committed $350 million. Colorado Fire and Police Pension Association $297 million, and San Bernardino County committed $150 to TPG Credit Essential Housing's Fund 4. Market Pulse to wrap it up. Per Bloomberg reporting, again, 5 of the largest retail-facing private credit BDCs all hit their 5% redemption caps in Q1, Barings, Apollo, Blue Owl, Ares, and BlackRock. The cap is the contractual maximum these vehicles will repurchase from investors each quarter. Moody's cut its outlook on Blue Owl Credit Income Corp from stable to negative, citing redemption pressure. U.S. and international regulators are launching a multi-month examination of private credit risk focused on growing insurance sector pressure. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund signed MOUs with both King Street and PGIM to co-develop regional investment strategies, the latest step in the Middle East alternatives push. And on the secondaries side, PE Hub reported that Blackstone is lining up a sale of PMG. Now, that's the week. 2 tracks, same industry, institutional fundraising still running at record volume, retail private credit under redemption pressure. Q2 will tell us which direction the split is heading. FundOpsHQ Live is presented by FundOpsHQ.com. One more time, you can visit FundOpsHQ.com/news to subscribe to our newsletter. It's free, and you'll get all this kind of coverage in your inbox every morning. We'll be back next week. Thank you for watching.